to work with those two for me was sort of an honour and a privilege, really, because they're not only sort of like top class, world class coaches and managers, they're like really humble sort of human beings as well. And they treated everyone the same, which was really good, no matter what your role or position was within the club. They were real, I would say, sort of people developers as well as sort of player developers as well, and almost like sort of teachers that are quite similar in terms of the way they would teach the players on the pitch and sort of develop them as human beings. That was a big part of sort of their makeup, their dynamic. And both extremely demanding, extremely hardworking. Attention to detail was unreal. They would be sort of the first in the training ground, last to leave every day, without a shadow of a doubt. And they live and breathe football. And I'd say Bournemouth was a really good period because the time I was there was we built within sort of 2 years. Bournemouth had just come up from League One, and within that 2 year period, we just managed to sort of, year one, we managed to sort of do really well in the Championship. But year two, we built sort of a winning team and a winning environment to go on and win the Championship unexpectedly. And, you know, that was sort of like really good memories because we did it on a moderate budget. It wasn't by going out and spending lots of money. It was big working with, we had sort of quite a small scouting team. It was like, I would say probably no more than sort of 5-6 scouts. But the key to that was developing a sort of a structure that was cohesive with what Ed wanted and how Bournemouth played and the philosophy and the playing style. And we managed to sort of find, using our sort of the way we done it, we managed to find sort of ways that we could get players that were sort of more applicable to us. And after that, I was lucky enough to go to Tottenham to work with Pochettino again. And that was a really, really good period as well because Tottenham, I think the year I went there, we was really close to winning the Premier League. And the model at Tottenham was similar to Bournemouth in developing players, but obviously a different level of player because it was fishing in a different market in terms of the quality, but still the same sort of emphasis on that. And I think within working at Tottenham as well, you get to know what it's like working at a real elite environment. So it's a different type of pressure. It's a lot more demanding. Tottenham had to be a club that, from the ownership down, demanded we get into the Champions League positions each year, but also do it where we didn't have a budget where we was competing with the likes of Liverpool or Chelsea or Man City. So our budget was slightly less in terms of what we was in the market for. So again, we had to be really creative in what we did in terms of sort of our work. And again, it was built on the philosophies of what Tottenham's about, the key principles with that, how Mauricio wanted his style of play and his key principles and what he wanted. And we managed to find sort of players within that we bought still for substantial money, but not the sort of inflated fees, and then turn them into real sort of like bordering on top class players. So, you know, it was a real good experience. One of the main highlights, I sort of touched on it before, was to Bournemouth was winning the Championship. With that and having that close relationship with all the staff and the manager, because I think for that achievement, what we achieved was incredible because there was teams in the Championship with miles bigger budgets than us, and I think the style we played and become accustomed to and the way we dominated games, was incredible, and from that, I think for me was that close relationship we had with Ed and Jason and sort of the team there, because it was such a family community club. So everyone was together, everyone was on the same journey, everyone was towards the same experience. So I think for me it was just the fondest memories you have there. Was obviously the achievement was just being part, I think, of something really special. Like something which we was sort of unexpected to do, and I think with Tottenham, I think sort of memories. If I was going to sort of pinpoint Mauricio, just like Mauricio on his own, I think of sort of memories where he would give you sort of a bit of his humility, where we was in the cafeteria one time, and he went into he just finished his lunch, and then he went out and was talking to one of the cleaners outside, and he was sort of cuddling him walking down the corridor, and then he give him sort of 4 tickets to come and watch sort of Tottenham, and sort of said, bring your family, you come, you're my guest, you can meet the players, and the cleaner was completely humbled by it. He never, wasn't expecting that at all. He was almost in tears. So it just gives you sort of an appreciation of, for me, when you're learning, for me, he's got big aspirations to go far in the game, when you're learning about someone who's not only good at their job, but also as a real human being. He had this aura about him when he come in, so you knew he was there. And where my office was sort of 2-3 doors down from where he was, so you could always hear him. He was very intense, but also you had the pleasure of watching training each day, which was really good, because the intensity at which Tottenham played their games was the intensity that he liked the players to train at. And there was each session was carefully planned. Each session was done with precision, no sort of stone left unturned. But it was just a creativity in it as well. Everything more or less was football based. It was to the whistle. It was to the letter. But you could see the players, in terms of coming off, absolutely exhausted, but getting what they need from the training sessions, because his training sessions were so intense, even though they were sort of sharp, but they were so intense and game related that the players, I don't think they'd ever been, sort of, from my experience, been coached like that before. So his coaching was second to none. I suppose again, if we've got personal preferences, would be probably with your overlapping fullbacks and inverted wingers that can play in the half spaces. But you also sometimes would be your preference, and that would be if you're more of a, I would say, sort of a top 6 Premier League club or a top 6 club across Europe, you're more be accustomed to play with that fluidity and freedom, and you don't really see the old-fashioned wingers as much anymore, sort of putting crosses in the box and sort of forwards getting on the end of them. So sometimes you still do want to see that, because still a lot of goals are scored by that. But I suppose if you look at the modern day game, the way sort of Liverpool, especially Man City, play, they're very fluid with their front three. So they all interchange positions, and they can all play in half spaces and make runs in off the line, and their fullbacks are their width. So that would be probably, if I was to watch a game of football, that would be sort of your preference. But sometimes you do like to see, the old-fashioned ways of wingers just beating their man and putting a cross into a box as well. If you look at even the way Sheffield United play, they've got such variation even though they play with sort of a back 3 and a front 2, which is, especially, and they're very brave the way they play with their centre-backs bombing forward and players moving off different positions and stuff. And they play with a lot of energy and tempo, but that they still score all types of goals. So they're still willing to put crosses in the box. They can still willing for sort of players to move into the box and come in off the line. I think the way he plays is very clever, because he's still giving himself options to score a multitude of goals. Because sometimes if you can look at a team and look at the players' strengths, the opposition's strengths and weaknesses, you can sort of see where their sort of base of attack's going to be. But I think with them, when you look at it and you think, okay, you're going to, he might rough up the defenders in the box if he puts crosses in, or he might give us a problem in behind, or he's going to drop short. So even though they've got players that understand that system and that philosophy of play, and they've got it nailed on in terms of the way they recruit, that players fit into that system, and it's worked really well for them. It's a really good question, that, because I think in a modern day game now, you have to, especially young players that are, getting into the first teams early, that the physical side is a big part to play now. So being physically sort of the demands of the game, so you'd have to have sort of some sort of physical components where you could maybe adapt and compete, to be able to compete with first team players, and obviously high technical ability. But I think it's it's their progression. So if you understand, to say if I was, for example, an academy, it's understanding like where they've come from, their development pathway, their progression to where they are, taking aside sort of the footballing qualities, because I think kids will have different characteristics. Some will be stronger in certain areas, some might be a little bit less confident, and if you understand them, especially if you're considering them for a first team environment, or even train me a first team and bring them through. I think you just have to have that process in place that once they tick all the footballing side, what will make them sort of have that jump into the first team. So what sort of core characteristics and what social adaptability they would have as sort of young adults, and I think that's quite key now. Especially when if you're going into, say, for example, Tottenham, where Mauricio had 16, 17-year-olds training with him, quite regularly, not loads, because, but you'd only have the ones, once he got what he wanted from a football side, he would only have the ones that he thought would have that strength of character that they could not be overawed by a first team environment, that he accepted mistakes, accepted they're young, and he accepted all the stuff that you're going to get from young people. But it was that work ethic. You're going to come in and work hard, and not to be overawed, because he would then, if you could do that, then your next step would be, now you're going to be considered as get on the bench as a first team player. So at Tottenham, we developed a system that allowed players to sort of get through that journey. So once they ticked the footballing criteria, those were the key components that sort of we had. It was like we had 5 core characteristics that we wanted to see for at least 3 of those from young players before they could make that transition or be considered for that transition into the first team. Because you don't want to make the mistake of, even though how talented they are, of giving them that opportunity too early and they freeze, or it's not quite ready for them, or their journey might have to be a loan move somewhere else first before they go straight into that. So I think you just have to have like a process, a way of developing, and so they understand what it actually takes to get through to the first team. And once they've sort of ticked those process criteria, then you can sort of start to invite them up to train with your first team and see how they develop and see if they can progress on further from there.
To see the full Q&A and for more exclusive content from top-level professional and academy coaches, subscribe to the Coach's Voice Academy at academy.coachesvoice.com.